They're going to be reviewing it on video, and then they're going to be exploring all night long, studying to make sure that we have every charge accounted for. We don't have a misfire. So none of those, we are sure of that, but we want to make sure that every charge was detonated.
So Colonel, what's the next step now?
The next step is that we're going to assess the wreckage that's still on the DALI. I'm sorry, let me try that again. We're going to assess the wreckage sitting on top of the DALI and still leaning in the water. We're going to make sure that the spans that you saw, the portions of the spans that fell, that they're not in the way, so that when we can refloat the DALI, it'll be a clear shot. We want to make sure that any other connections, if anything is still connected, that's free and clear. And then we'll be able to conduct our refloating sequence. And then at the same time, while we're focusing on refloating the vessel, we're going to be moving to the far side of the channel to continue getting that down all the way to 50 feet. We're very close. And then continuing to widen it. When we get to 400 feet wide, we're going to be able to bring anything that needs to come into the Port of Baltimore.
Colonel, you spent a lot of time communicating with the public not to expect a Hollywood production. And I think that goes to the gravity of the lives that were lost here. And at the same time, it was quite a concussion and was.
For us, it is, yes, it was as we expected. I think that sometimes when you see things in movies, it's far greater than that. But as you saw, it was very localized. It's remained around the steel and on the wreckage. The cuts occurred as they were planned. And while we still have some spans that remain, some steel that's still sitting on the DALI, we always were planning on removing any wreckage that we needed to. We have the Chesapeake 1000 currently rigged up with Gus, with the grab. And so we're going to be able to remove anything that needs to come off to make sure that it's stable for refloating.
At what point did you decide that you needed explosives to do this and to complete the job?
So this was an iterative planning effort. We explored cutting, if you remember, cutting that large piece off the front, off of the bow, and then taking the rest of that large span and placing it on the bottom of the riverbed and then cutting it up. But as we were analyzing that span, there was so much stress, there was so much tension and compression on that span that even as they were making the pre-cuts for the detonation, the members themselves were collapsing on the tools that they were using to make those cuts. So this was by far the safest and most efficient way to execute that number of cuts simultaneously, taking the human risk out of the picture.
And have you communicated with the crew that's on board? They're okay?
So me personally, I have not, but we have a wonderful team from our salver working with the vessel. That's Resolve Marine, who's in constant communication with the crew. The crew remained on board. They are operating the vessel, and they were going to be in the best position if the vessel did refloat to be able to keep it under control and minimize any negative impacts from what we saw.
How long will the surveying process take? And then can you just explain how refloating the DALI will work?
So the surveying is actually going to occur. It's going to start now. We're going to, once we complete the initial assessment, we're going to start with our Coda Octopus survey, and then tomorrow morning we'll have our divers from the Resolve Marine be going down to ensure that everything is safe on different sides of the DALI. The assessment that's going to take place up top is what we'll know. It'll definitely determine the next few steps. We want to make sure that it's safe for the divers to go in. So this is a very obviously very early to be able to say step by step in order, but we will be assessing in and around the front of the vessel and also the wreckage that remains. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Colonel.
So, Colonel, the initial blast that you saw given, that you have follow-on assessments that have been including below the water, is everything that the detonation experts saw indicate that it all went well and it achieved the result that they wanted?
Yeah, this was a very big milestone for our progression forward. We had good success. We saw the wreckage fall off the DALI. If you look at the before picture, it was a tremendous span that was sitting on top of the vessel, pinning it in place. We're going to assess to see how it's sitting right now and then be able to have some better information for you for tomorrow for sure. But for now, we see that it's disconnected, and we'll be able to do a little more work in the limited access channel. One thing that's important to remember is as we were deepening and expanding the limited access channel, as we were getting closer and closer to that span that was in the water, the team that was working on the span itself could feel the vibrations even as we were deepening 200 feet away from the span. So we had to make a judgment call and make sure that they were safe, and it limited the work that we could do. Now that we know that it's completely disconnected, we'll be able to make really good progress in that limited access channel, getting it open to 400 feet, which will give us everything we need to bring anything into the Port of Baltimore.
Did the team receive any indications that the ship moved at all or came up out of the water?
It's way too early to tell. We literally came from the observation point to here. Definitely didn't want to keep you all waiting too long for that. You guys have been so patient.
Can we still expect the DALI to be moved within 2 days?
Right now, that's our plan, but we have to look and see what we're going to do with the wreckage that's still on the ship. If it all would have fallen off, it might have been easier for me to say that. Our plan is to refloat it as soon as possible, but as safely as possible. We're very fortunate that we have the limited access channel to be able to move ships through to the Port of Baltimore. On the 14th and 15th, we have quite a slew that's waiting to come in and out. So we'll be able to do that as the DALI is being assessed. Our goal is to refloat her as soon as possible.
Were you hoping more of the steel was going to fall into the water?
There are definitely spans that we see that there are definitely members of steel that are still on top of the DALI. But before today, we already rigged up the Chesapeake 1000 with the large grab to be able to remove. We were thinking part of the road, and if it shifted and it was unstable. So we're prepared to go and partner, make sure that we can keep everything as safe as possible, remove as much of the wreckage if needed off the DALI to refloat it safely.
Might have to cut away, y'all will make it through. Just like pick off the steel that are.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but when you talk to the salvers, they kind of explain that that's exactly what they do. But you'll notice that they plan every single rig. Every time they're lifting any large spans that they're cutting and lifting, the part that you see that's still in the water, that span that remain, that's going to be engineered to be cut and lifted. The material that's on the DALI they're going to figure out how to do that and how to do it safely.
Do you think that will need more explosives? Or?
No, I don't think we won't be using.
We're going to cut away,
Yeah.
y'all. We're going to actually swap principals. We're going to bring the Coast Guard out this way and take her away to do a couple individuals.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Colonel.
being here.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it.
Appreciate the briefing. All right. Yes, sir. How are you doing? Great. Oh, all right.
All right.
Can I just get you to say and spell your first and last name?
So it's David O'Connell, David Oconnell.
And then the title and position?
So I'm the captain of the port here in Baltimore for the Coast Guard.
So how do you feel about what we just saw?
I was definitely excited. So it went as planned in terms of separating into two pieces and some of the other pieces falling away from the ship. So I think we're in good shape. We're going to do an assessment tonight and tomorrow and see what needs to be done to clean her up and get the DALI out of here as soon as we can.
Can you give us a sense of the steps that are involved in the assessment underwater and above water?
Right, so Navy Soup Salve will be in there tonight, if not already, using their CODA 3D system to take a look at what that looks like. They'll be followed by a dive survey tomorrow morning. And then there'll be some deballasting operations, so they'll be removing water from the ship to make it lighter in preparation for it to be moved in the next couple of days.
What does this moment mean for the recovery effort?
So it's a major milestone in the recovery effort, right? So now that was the last section in place in terms of holding the ship there. So now that it's separated, we're going to be in a position to like I said, assess and then and float the DALI as soon as we can.
Because of the damage on the ship, what's it going to take to get it out of there? How many boats do you think, tugboats? What's the process for that?
So the plan is to remove the ballast to make her buoyant on her own, and then use 4 tugboats to pull her out into the channel and escort her back to the pier.
What happens to the DALI once she's out?
So they're going to go to the pier over at Seagirt. They're going to take the remaining roadway that's on top of the DALI and some of the other wreckage on there and remove that. Then they're going to remove some containers over there, and then the plan would be for them to do some type of temporary repairs before they could leave to do more permanent repairs
So
somewhere else.
you're gonna move it with the roadway on top of it.
So it's going to be removed with the roadway on top of it. It's going to be easier to work the roadway pier side than it is in the middle of the channel where it is now.
Will all of the cargo have to be taken off of the ship?
Not all the containers will come off the ship. Some of the containers will come off the ship. They'll need some of the containers on the ship to make it under the bay bridge on the way out, in terms to keep it low in the water. And then probably the remaining containers will be taken off down in Norfolk, which is the next phase of the operation.
Does this operation appear to keep you online to refloat the ship by the end of the month?
Yes, sir. So I think we're online to keep moving. Hopefully, we're going to refloat the DALI in the next few days, and then that once the DALI's out of there, we'll be continue to work on removing the debris from the channel and the wreckage. And we still anticipate to be on time to open the full channel by the end of the month.
Could you explain how the section 4 was leaning against the bow? Right now, is there anything that's leaning against the bow that's touching the bottom of the river or not?
Not from what we can tell right now. So that's why we need to do a dive survey and get that CODA survey data. It looks like it's totally disconnected right now, but we don't know if that's from the lower cords that went below the water line as well. So we just need to make sure that that's the case.
And then part of that section 4 is just now sitting on top, is that right?
So it looks like there is still some steel that's on top of the ship, but it looks like it's all separated, so that's a good sign. It may just mean that we have to make some lifts off of there or some grabs off of there, but shouldn't affect the timeline too much.
And if I heard you correctly, you said the DALI, once it's refloated, it'll be going to Norfolk?
If we go into here, pier side to Seagirt for about 4 to 6 weeks,
Okay.
and I think the next phase of the operation is to move it down to Norfolk.
And will it go under some power to Norfolk? Will it be
It'll probably be assisted by tugs.
and this gash in the front of it, will that be fixed here in Baltimore? Is that going to be?
It will
fixed in
not be.
Norfolk?
Will not be fixed here in Baltimore. They'll be maybe doing some temporary repairs to make it a little more seaworthy. You know, the voyage down to Norfolk is enclosed voyage, so if we have a good weather window, it shouldn't be an issue.
What will happen to the crew? When will they go home?
So the crew is still on there. I don't know the exact time when they'll go home. Usually crews are on anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and they rotate out on individuals. They don't all swap out at one time. So I imagine once it gets back to the pier, they'll be making those arrangements. But I don't know for sure what those arrangements are.
Can you talk about the challenges of surveying what remains on the ship to make sure that that doesn't, when you refloat, fall off or cause any safety concerns or anything like that?
So they'll be doing a thorough assessment, both on the DALI, walking around there. They'll probably be using drones as well to fly over it to see what they can see, and then they'll be doing the underwater survey as well to make sure both a dive survey and an image survey from the CODA system.
Did the Unified Command get a preliminary assessment from the detonation team as to whether they were satisfied with what happened and whether they saw any anomalies or anything like that?
So they have camera equipment that they'll be assessing. They want to make sure that all the charges went off, so they'll be doing that overnight to make sure before we start any work. But other than that, we got the all clear. Everything went as planned in terms of how it was supposed to fall and how it was supposed to separate.
Is the concern if one didn't go off that it could go off later? Is that
Yeah, I mean,
kind
I
of
think
worry?
obviously if there's a charge that didn't go off, you wouldn't want to be doing any type of grab operations or diving operations where you could come in contact with that charge. But you know, this is an engineering company that does this for a living and all the time. Done it before. It's a tested method, so we're not that concerned. They'll give us the all clear sometime tonight.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, if anyone from JLA is on, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you guys still want a hit from me or not, or if you guys just dipped into that interview. Just like let me know, whatever you guys want. I don't know if we'll just wait. I heard them dip into it during, like I'm on their IFB. I heard them dip in.
Okay.